Hi everyone, let's solve this question. This question is about proportional logic. Okay, let's see what this question is saying. This is saying that a formula S is given to us, which is something alpha, which is implying some beta, right? Alpha imply beta. In this form, a formula is given to us. And they are asking whether this formula S is a tautology or not. And also we need to check whether antecedent, alpha is called antecedent and beta is called consequent. Okay, this beta is called consequent. So here this particular thing, whatever is in LHS, this is called antecedent and this is called consequent, right? This beta is called consequent. Okay, what they are asking whether they are logically equivalent or not. So what do we mean by logically equivalent? Alpha is equivalent to beta if and only if alpha double imply beta, right? So to check whether B is true or false, we need to check if alpha imply beta and at the same time beta should also imply alpha, right? This is one way of checking whether they are logically equivalent or not. C is saying whether S is a contradiction. Contradiction means S is always false, right? And tautology means like S is always true. So we will solve this question using two methods. One is that we will check whether we are able to arrive with true false combination. Why? Because given a formula in the form of alpha imply beta, if we can make alpha to true and at the same time if we are able to make beta to be false, then it means that this formula is taking a false value somewhere. That's mean that this formula is not a tautology, right? Okay. So let's check if we are able to make true false combination or not. Let's see. Let me write it another page. P and Q imply R. I think this is our antecedent. Imply P and Q imply Q and Q imply R. Right? I think this is the question. Yeah. Right. So let's check whether we are able to arrive with true false combination or not. Let's see. This is the method one. Okay. So to make this true and to make this false, let's see what is easier. Is it easier to make it true or it is easier to make it false? We can take anything. Let's take alpha. Let's see if we can make it true. At the same time, we will see that if we can make beta to be false. To make this alpha to be true, what we need to do? This is true when this particular thing is true and R has to be true, right? Or this is false and R is anything, right? So there are two possible ways where we can make alpha to be true. Okay, I think it's better to make beta to be false first and then we will make alpha to be true because here we need to take two possibilities and let's see if we need to face two possibilities in beta also. Let's see. We need to make beta to be false. Okay. To make it false, I know it has to be true and it has to be false. So there is only one possibility. So I think this is easier to make first beta to be false. Okay, let's work with that. To make beta false, what we need to do, we need to make this false. How can I make this false? There is only again one possibility. We need to make Q to be true and R to be false, right? And at the same time we need to make this LHS to be true. So how can I make it true? See, Q is always already true, so I can say that P and true. P and true is what? True. Or P, right? So can I make it true? Yes, I can make this true by setting P to be true, right? Okay, so I got my combination that P is true, Q is true, and R is false. At this combination, I am able to make this particular beta to be false. Now, beta is false at these values. Now, I need to take these values and let's check whether I am able to make alpha to be true. Let's see. See, alpha is P and Q. P and Q is what? True and true. True and true is what? Is true. This is true. Imply R is what? False. So true implies false is what? False. So if I set these three values to alpha, then I'm getting false value. I'm not able to make alpha to be true. That's why this true false combination in the alpha imply beta is not possible, right? True false combination is not possible. Why? Because when we are trying to make beta to be false, at the same time we are not able to make alpha to be true, right? So that's why this true false combination is not coming up. That's why I can say this is tautology, right? So let's check the options. S is tautology. Yes, option A is correct. But option B is saying that antecedent of S is logically equivalent to consequent of S. So I have checked कि alpha imply beta is happening. Basically, this is true. But I also need to check whether beta imply alpha is also there, right? Then only I can comment about B. So if I am able to check that this is also tautology, then I will say V is also true. Otherwise, I will say that V is not true, right? Because there are multiple choices that can be correct. They are saying the correct choices. So A is true, that I agree, but I also need to check whether B is true or not. To check V is true, we need to check whether beta also imply alpha, right? If beta imply alpha is also tautology, then I will say that B is also true. Let's check whether beta imply alpha is also tautology or not. So what is beta here? Beta is, I guess, this one, right? So beta is P and Q imply Q and R. And what is alpha here? Alpha is P and Q imply R. Okay, now let's check. Beta imply alpha is possible or not. To check whether beta imply alpha is tautology or not, what we need to check whether true false combination arises or not, right? So I need to make this beta to be true. At the same time, I need to make this alpha to be false, right? I need to make this beta to be true, and at the same time, I need to check whether I'm able to make alpha to be false. Now, which one is easier to make beta to true or alpha to false? See, anything like this LHS imply some RHS. So, which one is easier? Either to make this true or this false. See, if we want to make this true, then LHS can be false and RHS could be anything. Then also it is true. And if we want to make it, yeah, if we want to make it true, then there is another possibility, that is LHS is true and RHS is also true, right? So there are two possibilities to make it true. Any form which is having the formula like LHS imply RHS, then there are two possibilities to make it true. But there is only one possibility to make it false. That is true false combination, right? There is only one possibility. So now tell me whether to make beta to be true is easier or alpha to be false is easier. I think making alpha to false is easier. Why? Because this is some LHS imply RHS formula, and we know that there is only one possibility, right? So let me make alpha to false. To make alpha false, I need to make this particular quantity to true. At the same time, I need to make R to be false. So there is only one way I can make R to false. That is R is false itself, right? And how can I make this P and Q to be true? I need to make P to be true and Q to be true. Now with these values, I can make alpha to false. Now let's check whether I can make beta to be true. See, if I put true and true, then this will be true. This complete thing will be true. Imply Q is true and false. True and false is false. So true imply false. This is false. I'm not able to make beta to be true, right? So true false combination is not arising here. That is why this beta imply alpha is also a tautology, right? So I can say that these are logically equivalent. Why? Because alpha imply beta is also there and beta imply alpha is also there. That's why alpha is by implying to beta. That means that alpha and beta are actually equivalent, right? So I can say that B option is also correct. So this is the method one, where what we have done, we have actually checked whether true false combination is arising or not. But we can solve it with method two. And it seems like many students might be liking the method two because for many students the method two might be easier. So let's see what is method two. See, in method 2, what we are going to do, we are going to apply a simple formula where we have if alpha imply beta, then we will be saying this is equivalent to alpha prime plus beta, right? That we already know. Now, let's see with our question, what is alpha? Alpha is P and Q imply P and Q imply R, right? This is alpha. P and Q imply R. Okay, so I can rewrite it as PQ imply R, which is same as PQ prime plus R, which is same as P prime plus Q prime plus R, right? Yes. And what is beta? Beta is P and Q imply P Q imply R, right? Q imply R, yeah. So I can rewrite it like PQ imply Q imply R means Q prime plus R, right? And that is same as PQ prime plus Q prime plus R, which is same as P prime plus Q prime plus Q prime plus R. And Q prime two times, it means it is nothing but Q prime. So this is same as P prime plus Q prime plus R. And if you notice that alpha and beta are actually equal, alpha and beta is actually equal. It means that alpha equal to beta. Alpha is logically equivalent to beta. It means that alpha is implying beta and beta is also implying alpha. Means there is by implication. That means that alpha imply beta is tautology. This is tautology. This is also tautology. And in fact, these both are logically equivalent. So that is why A and B are answered. So this is method 2, right? C is of course false because if it is tautology, then it can never be a contradiction because S is always true, right? So yeah, D is also false. That's all.
Hi everyone, let's solve this question. So this is GATE 2021 question, and they have defined a new term called quality score. So let me read this question. In a directed acyclic graph with a source vertex S, okay, S is given to a source vertex. The quality score of directed path, okay, quality score of directed path is defined to be product of the weights of the edges on the path. So basically what they are saying that if there is any path, suppose if I ask you that what is the quality score of this path S to A, what is the quality score of this path? Then you will be saying that this is defined to be the product of the weights of the edges on the path. So there is only one S. So the quality score, let me write it QS, of path S to A is 9. Why? Because 9 is the edge weight. And since there is only one edge, then we do not need to take any product. Okay, if I ask you the quality score of the path SAB, S to A and then A to B, then you will be saying that 9 into 1, that is again 9. Why 9 into 1? Because 9 is the first edge and 1 is the second edge. That's why I need to take the product of all the edges on the path, right? Further, they are defining a quality score of a vertex. Okay, this is a quality score of a path, and further they are defining a quality score of a vertex. V is defined to be maximum among the quality scores of all the paths from S to B, right? So if I ask you that what is the quality score of vertex D, okay, quality score of vertex D, then you will be saying that okay, what are the all paths from S to D? This is one path from S to A and then from A to D. And what is another path? Another path is S to C and then C to D. So there are two paths that are possible. So what is the quality score of D? I will take the maximum of quality scores of these two paths. Okay, maximum of these two paths, and then I will be declaring that this is the quality score of my vertex T. So what we are saying, that if there are multiple paths from S to some vertex, let's call it D. Okay, from either S to C and then from C to D, or from S to A or from A to D. Right? Let's suppose there are multiple paths. It is given in the diagram also. From S to A, then from A to D, or from S to C, or from and then C to D. So if there are multiple paths, then what will the quality score of this vertex D? What will be the quality score of D? It will be the maximum of quality score of the path from S to A and then from A to D, and quality score of the path from S to C and then from C to D, right? I need to take the maximum. This is the quality score of any vertex. Okay, I hope definition is clear. Now they are asking the quality score of S is assumed to be 1. Okay, now they are asking the sum of the quality scores of all the vertices in the graph. So they are asking sum of the quality score of all the vertices. So I need to find the quality score of A and quality score of B, and then quality score of like all other vertices, and we need to sum it up to finally find out the answer. Okay, so before doing that, let me show you a simple property that we can follow here. See, S is a vertex, which is a source vertex, and there could be multiple paths from S to suppose some vertex, let's call it A, and similarly there could be multiple paths from suppose S to B. Okay, from S to B. Now if I ask you quality score of A, then you will be saying whatever is the maximum from S to A. Okay, so whatever is the maximum S product. So either let's say this path is having quality score of X, this path is having quality score of Y, this path is having quality score of Z. Similarly, let's say this is having P, this is having Q, this is having R. So, and further let's assume that X is the greatest, and similarly P is the greatest among this PQR, and X is the greatest among XYZ. Now, what will be the quality score of A? It will be maximum of XYZ, and let's assume it is X. Similarly, what will be the quality score of B? It will be maximum of PQR, and let's assume it is P. Now, we are asked to find out the quality score of, let's say, C. Okay, let's say C. We are asked to find out the quality score of C. Now, let's say that this A to C is having some edge weight, which is P, or P is already used, so let's assume it to be M. Okay, and let's say that B to C is having some edge weight N. Then what will be the quality score of C? It will be maximum of all paths from S to C. And what are the all paths? S to A is itself is having 3 paths. So basically I will be saying that maximum of X into M, comma, Y into M, comma, Z into N, comma, like P into N, comma, Q into N, comma, R into N, right? This will be, this is what I will be taking. Now, you see that if I try to find out the maximum, then obviously this among these three, P into N is maximum, and similarly among these three, X into M is maximum, right? So I can say that this is equal to maximum of X into M, comma P into N. We just need to compare X into M and P into N, because among these three, if I ask these three to fight, then obviously X into M will win. Why? Because X is already winner here, and this M is just a multiplier. Similarly, P is already winner here, and this N is just a multiplier, so I can say that P into N will win, right? So instead of finding out the all pass, I just need to find out the quality score of this two paths, right? Instead of finding out quality score among all the paths, I just need to find out the quality score among these two paths. So basically what I mean to say that we can compute the quality score of A, that is X, and we can use it to find out the quality score of C. Okay, when we are at C, we do not need to find out the all the paths again. We can just reuse the quality score that we have already found out, right? And similarly, we can reuse the quality score of B that we have already found out, which is P, right? So I can say that if I need to find out the quality score of C, then I can simply take the X into M and P into N, and I can find out the maximum among both of this, right? Is this okay? So this is actually called dynamic programming in algorithms. But if you have not studied algorithm, or if you have studied, just don't worry. Okay, this is the simple concept that I wanted to talk about. So what we can do, we can actually store the quality scores. Let's suppose the quality score is X here and quality score of B is P here, and we can reuse it. Okay. So what we can do, we can locally store up the quality scores of every node, and we can reuse those quality scores for the further computation. Instead of finding out all the paths again and again, we can just apply the simple property, right? So similarly here in this our example, if there are two paths, so what we can do, we can find out the quality score of A, and we can find out the quality score of C, and we can use those quality scores to directly find out the quality score of D, instead of again computing the quality score of the whole path S to D. What we can do, we can save the quality score of C, and then we can find out quality score of D using the saved computation. So what I mean to say, that if we have, this is S, right? This is suppose A, this is B, this is C, and we have found out the quality score of A and B, and then we need to find out the quality score of C. Then what we can do, quality score of C is nothing but maximum of quality score of A into the as width, which is AC. Okay, let me call it M into M, comma, quality score of B into M. So this is what I wanted to point out. I hope this is clear. This is basically just saving those quality scores for the future computation, which is computing the quality score of C, right? Okay, now let's come to the question. This is our question. So let me write this question on the next slide. Okay, this is our question, right? And we need to find out the quality scores of all the vertices. This is the vertex A, okay? All the vertices, and then we need to sum it up. Okay, let's find out what is the quality score of A. Since there is only one edge, so I can say the quality score of A is 9. Okay. Similarly, quality score of C is also 1 because there is only one edge. Now, what about the quality score of D? Quality score of D will be quality score of A, which is 9, into this 1, which is 9 into 1, comma, quality score of C, which is 1, into this edge width, which is 1, and maximum of all this, maximum of this. Okay. So, which is nothing but 9. This is a quality score of D, which is 9. Okay. Now, let's come to the quality score of B. Since there is only one path, right? So I can say that quality score of B is nothing but 9, which is nothing but 9 into 1. 9 into 1. And I have nothing to compare it, right? I have nothing to compare it with anyone else because there is only one path. So the quality score of B is 9. Similarly, the quality score of F is also 9, right? Okay. So I have found out the quality score of A, quality score of B, quality score of C, quality score of F. What about quality score of G? See, there are two paths. That is, one is coming from F and one is coming from D. Now I do not need to calculate all the paths from S to G. I just have the quality scores of D and F, and I can reuse it. So what will the quality score of G? It will be maximum of quality score of D into this edge weight, which is 9, right? 9, comma, quality score of F into this edge weight, which is 1 into 1. So I can easily compute it. What is quality score of D, which is 9, into 9, comma, what is quality score of F, which is 9, into 1, which is nothing but 81, comma, 81, comma, 9, which is nothing but 81, right? Because I need to take max. Okay, I need to take max. So 81 is the quality score of G. 81 is the quality score of G, right? Now G is also done, and we have left with E and T. Okay, what is the quality score of E? Quality score of E we can easily find out by using the quality score of D and B, right? So quality score of E is nothing but maximum of quality score of D into this as well, which is 9, comma, quality score of B into this as well, which is 1. Maximum of quality score of D is nothing but 9 into 9, comma, quality score of B is nothing but 9 into 1, which is again 81, right? So quality score of E is coming out to be 81. Now, what about the quality score of T? I can again take the maximum of quality score of, let me write it on another page, okay? Or let me erase it here and then I will rewrite. So I need to find out the quality score of T, which is nothing but maximum of quality score of E into 9, comma, quality score of G into 1, which is nothing but quality score of E is 81, 81 into 9, comma, quality score of G is again 81, 81 into 1, right? So I need to take max. So what it will be? It will be the maximum will be this number, which is nothing but 972. So 729 is the quality score of T, right? 729. Now we know the quality scores of all the vertices and we just need to sum it up to get the final answer. Okay, so let me erase it and we can quickly sum it up. What is the quality score of S, which is 1, right? It is defined in the question itself. Plus quality score of A, 9, quality score of B is 9, plus quality score of C is 1, plus quality score of D is 9, plus quality score of E, where is it? It is 81, plus quality score of F, which is 9, plus quality score of G is 81, plus quality score of H. Okay, H is not there, directly T is there. So quality score of T is 729. If we sum it up, then it will come around 929. Okay, this is the answer that we get after summing it up. I hope this question is clear. So the only logical thing or only smart technique that we have applied is that this formula, right? This is called dynamic programming, where what we are doing, we are actually reusing the quality scores that are pre-computed, right? Instead of again and again computing all the paths and then computing the quality scores, we are just reusing the quality scores of the intermediate vertices. Okay, let's solve this question. This question is saying that there is a set S which is consisting 10 elements. Okay, and they are asking the number of tuples of the form A comma B such that A and B are subset of S and A is a subset of B. So what they are saying, that there are two sets A and B where A is a subset of B, also A and B both are subset of S. Now how many such pairs are possible for A and B? That's what they are asking, right? So let me take an example to explain this question. Suppose that A is having only one element, which is, let's suppose, A1, where S is having, let's suppose, n elements A1 to An. Okay, and if A is having only one element, then what are the possibilities for B? B must have that A1. Why? Because B is a superset, right? So we must have that A1. Apart from that, B may or may not have other elements, right? So what are the other elements? Other elements are this: A2, A3 till AN. So we may have A2 in B or we may not have A2 in B, right? Similarly for every other element like A3, A4 till AN. So it means that we have two choices here. Either we include this element in A, this element in B, or we do not include it in B, right? So for every element, we have two choices. Okay. Now, what can I say that how many total B's are possible? Since there for every element there are two choices, so I can say there are n minus n one element. So total 2 power n minus 1 possibilities are there for B, right? But A might have A2, only A2, right? Here it is having only A1, but if it is having only A2, then also we have 2 power n minus 1 possibilities, right? Because in that case B must have A2, and for the remaining elements we have two choices. For every element we have two choices. So that's why total 2 power n minus 1 possibilities for B, right? So here total, if A is having only one element, okay, if cardinality of A is 1, then total possibilities for B will be n into 2 power n minus 1, right? Why? Because this 2 power n minus 1 is coming from the choices for every element that we have, right? For every n minus 1 element that we have, from there we are getting this 2 power n minus 1. And how we are getting this n? Since there are n possibilities for A also, like either it can have A1, A2, only A3, only A4, like that. If cardinality of A is 1, then there are total n into 2 power n minus 1 possibilities for B. Okay. But the question is saying that cardinality of A and B could be anything, right? So what we need to do? See, if cardinality of A is 1, then the answer could have been n into 2 power n minus 1. This is the answer. If they ask us that cardinality of A is fixed, that is 1, then this is the answer. Total such pairs of A comma B is 2 n into 2 power n minus 1. Why? Because there are n possibilities for A, and for every possibility of A, we have 2 power n minus 1 possibilities for B, right? What about if A has cardinality 2? If A has cardinality 2, then we have NC2 choices for A, right? NC2 choices for A, and for every choice, we have 2 power n minus 2 choices for B, right? These many choices for A and these many choices for B. Okay, let me explain it bit clearly. See, suppose that there is one pair A comma B, and that we need to find out that how many such pairs exist. Suppose in general A might be having k elements A1 to AK, right? Some k elements. It need not to be in the order of A1 to AK, but I'm just saying some k elements. And B has to has, in this case B has to has this A1 to AK. And what about remaining n minus k elements? For this n minus k elements, B may or may not have these elements, right? So for every element I have two choices, right? For every element I have two choices. Either I can include it in B or I can exclude it from B, right? So I have 2 power n minus k choices for B if A is having these many elements. And similarly, I have nck choices for A, right? Nck choices for A if A is having k elements. So if cardinality of A is k, then I have nck choices for A, and for every choice I have 2 power n minus k choices for B, right? See, we have seen that cardinality of A, if cardinality of A is 1, then we have NC1 choices for A and 2 power n minus 1 choices for B. If cardinality of A is 2, then we have NC2 choices for A and 2 power n minus 2 choices for B. Similarly, if cardinality of A is K, then we have NCK choices for A and 2 power n minus K choices for B, right? And this cardinality of A could be N also, right? Then we have NCN, that is 1, only one choice for A, and 2 power n minus n, right? If k is n, then it will be if k is n, then it will be ncn and 2 power n minus n, which is nothing but 1 into 2 power n minus 1 is also 2 power n minus n is also 2 power 0, that is 1. Only one choice for a and only one choice for b, which is taking all elements a1 to an in a and taking all elements a1 to an in b, right? So anyway, this k that is I'm interested in, this k can range from 1 to n, right? 1 to n. K equal to 1 means cardinality of edge 1, k equal to 2 means cardinality of edge 2. Similarly, k equal to n means cardinality of edge n, right? I hope this is clear. See, what I want to know that if cardinality of A is in general k, then what are the possibilities for B? This is 2 power n minus k possibilities. And further, what are the possibilities for A itself? Because there need not to be only one set for A. So there might be multiple sets, multiple choices for A. So these are n minus, sorry, nck choices, right? Nck choices for A if cardinality of A is k, and 2 power n minus k choices for B, right? So what we need to do, we need to just sum it up, right? nc1 into 2 power n minus 1 plus nc2 into 2 power n minus 2 plus dot dot nck 2 power n minus k plus ncn 2 power n minus. So this is the answer, right? But can we solve it further using binomial theorem? Okay, let me remind you that for a plus b power n, we have the formula, that is nc0 a power 0 b power n plus nc1 a power 1 b power n minus 1 plus nck a power k b power n minus k plus ncn a power n b power 0, right? This is the formula that we already have. Now, if you compare just kth term of both formulas, then you will see that if we take b equal to 2, right, b equal to 2 and a equal to 1, right, then we have 1 plus 2 power n equal to this whole thing, right, this whole thing is equal to 1 plus 2 power n, which is nothing but 3 power n, right, where n is the cardinality of S and number of elements in S, and what is given, n equal to 10, this is already given, right? There are 10 elements in S. So what we can say, that this is nothing but 3 power 10. So 3 power 10 is our answer. We can also solve the same question using a different method, which you might find a bit edgy, but it's good to know both the methods, okay? So that's why I have explained this long method. So there is a very short method that we can see. See what this question is asking us. This question is saying that there are two sets A and B such that A is a subset of B, right? And these both A and B are subset of S, where S is having 10 elements. Now they are asking such pairs of A and B. This is the question, right? Now just observe that if there are 10 elements in S, A1 to A10, now how many choices for I have for every element? Suppose that if I pick A1, then can I say that if A1 belongs to A, then obviously like A1 has to belong to B, right? And if A1 does not belong to A, then it may belong to B or may not belong to B, right? So here if A1 does not belong to A, then it belongs to B or it may not belongs to B, right? So there are three choices I have for A1. Is it understood? See, if either A1 belongs to A or A1 does not belong to A. If A1 belongs to A, then I have only one choice. I need to include this A1 into B, right? But if A1 does not belongs to A, then I may or may not have this in B, right? Because B is a superset. So, see, this is A and this is B, right? So, if A1 does not belongs to A. If A1 is here, if A1 is here, then which does not belongs to A, then it may belongs to B or it may not belong to B because it may belong to S only, right? So this complete thing is S. So if A1 does not belongs to A, then it may be in B or or it may be here. That is outside B. But obviously it has to be in S, right? So for every element we have three choices and there are 10 elements. So that's why we have 3 into 3 into 3 till 10 times. So we have 3 power 10 choices for such pairs of A comma B, right? So this is the answer. 3 power 10 is answer. So we can solve this question in this way also, but I have explained you the long way so that we we should know both the ways. Okay. Okay. So let's try to solve this question. What they are saying that there is set S1 and there is set S2. S1 is the set of all n into n matrices with entries from the set ABC. Okay. And S2 is saying the set of all functions from the set this to the set this, right? Okay. So let's first see that what are the S1 and S2. And before that, let's check like what they are asking. They are asking about the surjection or injection or bijection from S1 to S2. Okay. Let's first see what are the what is the S1. S1 is a set of all matrices with the entries from the set A, comma B, comma C. Set of all n into n matrices. Okay. So suppose there is one n into n matrix and the entries of this matrix are coming from ABC. So either the entry could be A or it could be B or it could be C, right? So there are three possibilities for every entry, right? It means that if I talk about the cardinality of S1, it means that there are 3 power n square possibilities for such matrices. That's why there are 3 power n square, right? 3 power n square matrices are possible. That's why cardinality of S1 is 3 power n square. So if I say that S1, how would S1 look like? So S1 will look like this. There is one matrix, there is another matrix, there is another matrix, something like that, right? And there are total 3 power n square matrices. And every entry of this matrix is either A or B or C, right? Either A or B or C. So the matrices are of n into n dimension. So I hope this S1 is clear, right? How will S1 look like? So cardinality of S1 is 3 power n square. What about S2? S2 is a set. Okay, S2 is a set of all functions. Okay, so suppose there are some functions with S2, F1, F2, something like that. S2 is a set of all functions from this set 1, 0, 1 to n square minus 1 to 0, 1, 2. From this set to this set. Okay, let's see how will S2 look like. See, for S2, there is a set S2 which is a set of all functions f1, f2 and each function f1 or any fi is a function from some set that is 0, 1, 2 to n square minus 1 to 0, 1, 2, right? From this set to this set. So each function is having some domain which is this set and some codomain which is this set, right? Now let's see that how many such functions are possible. Okay, which map from this set to this set. So let's suppose there is a set A which is this domain and there is a set B which is this codomain. So B is having three elements 0, 1, 2 and this A is having n square elements starting from 0 to n square minus 1. So A is having n square elements and B is having three elements. Then how many such functions are possible from A to B? For every, if you see, for every element of A, we have three choices, right? We have three choices. I can map this 0 to either this 0 or I can map this 0 to this 1, or I can map this 0 to this 2, right? So there are three choices for every element, and there are n square elements total. So that's why I have 3 power n square such functions that are possible. In general, if this is having, let's suppose, n elements and this is having m elements, then total m power n such functions are possible, right? So here we have 3 power n square functions that are possible, because 3 is the cardinality of B and n square is the cardinality of A. So that is why the cardinality of S2 itself is 3 power n square. Why? Because these many functions are possible from A to B. That is why total functions that are in S are 3 power n square. So this is from F1, F2 and from 3 power n square. So these many functions are possible in S2. So the cardinality of S2 is 3 power n square. And we have already seen that cardinality of S1 is 3 power n square. So both cardinalities are same. So both cardinalities are 3 power n square. Cardinality of S1 equal to cardinality of S2 equal to 3 power n square. Right? Now let's see what they are asking. They are asking whether there is a surjection between S1 and S2. Okay. To see that, let's first see that when surjection, bijection or injections are possible and how it is related to cardinality of the sets, right? So I can say that injection between S1 and S2 is possible when, let me look at it. This is, let's suppose this is S1, let's suppose this is S2, right? This is S1 and this is S2, and we want injection. Injection means like we want each element of S1 should relate to a unique element in S2, right? This kind of thing we want, right? This kind of thing we want. So here the some element of S2 might not relate to any element of S1. That's okay, but each element of S1 should relate to a unique element in S2. I mean, this kind of possibility is not there. This kind of possibility is not there. The two element of S1 should not relate to one element of S2, right? So if if we need to check that when injection is possible, then we can say that whenever the cardinality of S1 is less than or equal to the cardinality of S2, then we can have an injection, right? I hope this is clear, because S1 should be having lesser or equal elements than S2, then we can have injection. So let's suppose the cardinality of S1 is m and cardinality of S2 is n, then m should be less than or equal to n, right? And what about surjection? In surjection, we say that no element of S2 should left out, which means, let's suppose that this is S1 and this is S2, then we will be saying that every element of S2 should relate to some element in S1, right? Let's suppose this is having m elements and this is having n elements, then every element of S1 should relate to, sorry, every element of S2 should relate to some element in S1. So we should not leave out any element in S2, right? We should not leave out any element in S2. So this kind of possibility is there in surjection. So when can we say surjection is possible? Whenever this m is greater than or equal to n, right? Whenever m is greater than or equal to n, then we can say surjection is possible. And what about bijection? We say bijection is possible when m is equal to n. So bijection means there is one-to-one correspondence. So every element of S1 should relate to exactly one element in S2, and also no element in S2 should left out. So there is exactly one-to-one correspondence. Then we say that bijection is possible. So this is how the cardinalities are related. Cardinalities of the sets are related to that whether the which kind of function is possible, injection, surjection or bijection, right? This is how they are related. So if I say that m is equal to n, if I say that cardinality of S1 is equal to cardinality of S2, then what kind of functions are possible? See, we are having less than equal to here. So that is why injection is possible. Why? Because either it is less than or it is equal to. In our case, if we have the equal to a cardinality, equal cardinality, then we can say yes, injection is possible. Similarly, we can say surjection is possible. Why? for surjection m should be greater than or equal to n, and here we have equal, so that is why surjection is also possible. Similarly, bijection is also possible. So injection, bijection, surjection, everything is possible if the cardinality is equal. Okay, so in our case we know that cardinalities are equal, right? Cardinalities are already equal. Then let's see which option is correct. There exists a surjection. Yes, there exists a surjection. There does not exist an injection. No, this is not correct, because injection, surjection, bijection, all three possibilities are there. There does not exist a bijection. This option is also incorrect. There exists a bijection. Yes, this option is correct. So A and D are correct, because every type of function is possible, because cardinalities are same. So this question was easy. We just need to check the cardinalities, and we should know that how cardinalities relate to the type of function that are possible between S1 and S2. I hope this is clear. Okay.